figure it out.
Friends,
It's on.
thank you so much for coming today. It's good to see you. It is our blessing to be able to host this conversation today. Reverend Dr. Denise Barnes from the California Pacific Annual Conference is here. She is the Justice and Compassion Coordinator, as well as our LGBTQIA+ Coordinator for the California Pacific Annual Conference, who is here to share with you some things that we strive to hope to know as we strive to be an open and affirming congregation in Temecula Valley. So it's our blessing to have her with us here today. Please have some water, clear water. I'm not worried about staining anything, so please, if you need a drink, there's waters here in the back. And please welcome Reverend Dr. Denise Barnes.
Hi everybody, good afternoon. It's good to be with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about some stuff you probably already know, and we'll go over that quickly, but I'm also going to talk about some stuff you might not know about or understand the scope of. So bear with me. I'm happy to answer questions as we go, but raise your hand so I can see you, alright? So otherwise I'll just blithely carry on listening to the sound of my own voice. I'm good at that. Alright, next slide please, Hunter.
Okay. Can you check and see if your microphone's turned on?
It is.
Okay.
I've turned it on. Is it not working?
I can't hear you through the speakers.
Is it
It's got a green
saying?
light.
Here, you do this light.
Must just sound.
Okay.
Maybe it's this.
I probably put the right light.
Is that any better?
Hunter, go ahead and do it. Yeah, speak a little bit more.
How's this? Is that better? Oh, that sounds right. Now I can hear it echoing. Alright, can we move on? Thank you. So,
Yep, that's the difference between not enough and too much. Sorry.
I am the Director of Justice and Compassion Essential Ministries for some 380, 400 churches across the southern half of California, Hawaii, Saipan, and Guam. And my job involves anything to do with any kind of justice and compassion work, so that includes women's rights, LGBT rights, immigration, disaster response, what else? Mental health, anything you can think of that our churches might be working on, hunger and homelessness, that kind of stuff. So as you can imagine, I've been quite busy this year already. I was made the LGBT advocacy coordinator in 2019 and was co-founder of the LGBTQIA strategy group. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of background as to why this is important. When I answered my call after years of believing the church telling me that I was incompatible with Christian teaching and that I couldn't be a pastor because I was queer, I finally realized that God loved me and made me exactly as I am, and that I could answer that call, so I did. But I answered it in a church, the United Methodist Church, that said that homosexuality was incompatible with Christian teaching. And the reason I did was because I felt that the more change we could make from the inside, the better. Last year, we had a general conference. We're a global church, so everybody from across the world comes and talks and makes the rules. And we removed all of the harmful language about homosexuality from our book of rules. So it was huge. It had been fought for 52 years since it had been put in that book, and we got it all removed last year. But we needed things like strategy groups and people helping others to help fight the problems that the church was working along with systemic problems to keep LGBT people oppressed and down and out of society. So General Conference 2024, for United Methodist people specifically, these are the things that happened. So all language that said homosexuality, the practice of is incompatible, was removed. There was a removal on the ban and ordination, an appointment of self-avowed practicing homosexuals. Now, I am a self-avowed practicing homosexual. I always said I wasn't practicing, I knew how to do it and I was pretty good at it. But I was ordained anyway because here in California our bishop took the stance that if we had a call and it was seen as a call, then we should be ordained regardless of who we loved. So that was removed, and I got to push the button on the vote for that one. So that felt really good for me, it was away. Okay, next one. And we're also allowed to perform same-gender marriages now. We weren't before. There were no penalties now anymore for somebody like Pastor Drew to marry a same-gender couple. Before that, there would have been charges brought against him, and he could have had his ordination removed for doing such a thing. What else? Yeah, we weren't allowed to fund any groups that gave money to LGBT organisations. We weren't allowed to fund them or work with them in any way. That's wrong. We could be appointed across a conference line, so we're divided into different geographical conferences. And because some of our conferences still don't agree with all of this, it's not safe for some queer clergy to be appointed there, so they can now be appointed over here or other places where it's safe for them to be so. So it's not a win-win because it doesn't say that queer people are equal. It doesn't say that we're as equally and wonderfully made as everybody else, but it doesn't say we're abhorrent or abominations anymore. So we took it as a win. There's still work to be done. And the reason it worked was because it does hold this space, right? So that we can all be together in ministry still doing the work we're doing, even if we don't agree on everything. Thanks, Hunter, next one. Okay, so for local churches, it means this, that nothing means that they have to have an LGBT pastor. It means they can if they want to, but they don't have to. And it's up to the pastor to decide if a couple should be married, regardless of what the genders of the couple are. So the pastor can make that decision. And the membership of the church, of course. It also means that you can be a candidate for ministry, which we couldn't for a long time. Although we could in California, and places like New York and Portland and Oregon, you know, you can picture the map and figure out which are the places where they allow people to answer their call and be ordained. And Bishop Carson made this lovely quote about it that said, United Methodist churches will have the freedom to respond to God's call to ministry in ways that are best for their bisexual and missional communities. We will do this anchored in the grace of Jesus Christ in connection with each other and in our desire to grow in love with God and our neighbour. So overall it went down very well. We lost a lot of churches. A lot of churches disaffiliated and formed and made a new thing called the Global Methodist Church, and that's the arm of the church that does not support LGBT people or probably women clergy or that kind of thing. So we have parted our ways from that. And they happened on Friday, May the 3rd, 2024, immediately after the General Conference, which is unusual for us. Normally we have to wait until January, but the way we passed it meant that it would be taken into effect immediately. So, good news for our churches, but I think, especially now, we have to look at the world and the community around us to understand how things are for LGBT people in the world right now, okay? So nearly 1 in 4 Gen Z adults, that's 23.1% of Gen Z result. Gen Z adults identify as LGBTQ. 1 in 4. Now, when I was a young person, the average age for coming out, I'm going to age myself now, but in the 70s, the average age for somebody to come out was 55. Now, do you know what the average age is right now for coming out? 9. Yeah. We've come a long way, right? We've come a huge distance. But this is it. They identify as bisexual. 56% of LGBT adults identify as bisexual. And that's an important statistic to remember when we start talking about some of the other stuff in a minute. And see the growth. These are United States figures. These come from the Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council is going to be a website you're going to want to go and look at to get information and learn about things. But I think it's amazing how much we're growing and how much awareness is growing. Okay, next one. Yeah. I don't need to say an awful lot about that, right? But that's what's happening right now. Stonewall, the public park and recreation site for Stonewall, they have removed the T and the Q from the plaques. I was just there a few years ago. It's such an incredible place to visit as a queer person and to soak in that history of the fight that everybody did. And now they've taken off the T and the Q, so it just says LGB. Okay, next one. Only 1.3% of all US adults identify as transgender. 1.3%. It's a very, very small amount of people when you consider the size of the population of the United States of America. Important to remember. Thanks, Simon. Okay, at the top is a website, and I realise after I made this, it's far too long and difficult for you to write down, but just remember hrc.org, the Human Rights Campaign. They are doing some really good information giving right now on everything that's happening to the rights of LGBT people, particularly to our trans brothers and sisters and to people who identify as bisexual. So here's some of the things. You can go to their website, get more information, find out how you can help support the work they're doing. Go back one. So placing restrictions on gender markers such as passports, right? No longer can you have an X on your passport if you don't identify as an M or an F. Reinstating and expanding the military ban on transgender service people. The global gag rule that blocks funding for reproductive healthcare organisations for LGBT people. Directing agencies to take action to prevent gender-affirming care. Attempting to dictate to students, their parents and educators what books they can read. Prohibiting transgender girls from participating in any school sports whatsoever. Stop there for a minute. So, this wasn't in my presentation, obviously, until we got to this year. And there's a lot that's going on. And I just wanted you to be aware that whilst we as the United Methodist Church might have said, yeah, we love gay people, they can come now, the world is not saying the same thing right now, or our world in the United States of America is not saying the same thing right now. And so we have a lot of work to do to make sure people know that they're safe and are loved, that they have allies. On Valentine's Day, my wife and I went to, what's the name of it, the Brazilian, what's that called? Brazilian Steakhouse, that's the one. We went there for a Valentine's lunch. And we got shown to our table right in the very corner. And a young man came to service and was rude and surly and difficult. And the table wobbled, like really wobbled. It wasn't just a little, my wife is not the most graceful of people. And I could see my whole meal being landed on my plate. So I asked him if he could fix the table. And he ignored me. My wife said to him, could you fix the table? It's really wobbly. And he threw a shawl at her as we walked away and left her. Then he came back, she went to the restroom, he came back and he brought a napkin to stick under the leg of the table. Which, wasn't really a lot of help because they're soft. But as he did it, he tipped the table up so much that all the water and drinks on the table would have gone all over my lap had I not caught him. Didn't speak to me, didn't make eye contact with me, didn't do any more. And then he disappeared. We got 4 or 5 other different servers, but we realised and found out later that he had refused to serve us. In California, he refused to serve us on Valentine's Day because we were a couple. So it's happening here as well as in all the other places too, and luckily we weren't harmed or hurt. We were mad, we were upset, but we weren't physically harmed. But it's happening all over. And these executive orders are giving permission for it to happen more and more. And we had nobody there to stick up for us. Not one person who saw what was happening. There was plenty of other romantic couples all having their food with us. Not one person called him out. Not one person said it wasn't right. That's our job, is to stick up for each other. We have to be brave enough to do it. we're brave enough to be here right now and learn about it, we've got to be brave enough to do it outside of there. So that's why I wanted to share all of that with you. So, this workshop is designed really for the next few bits we're going to go through for churches that are thinking about how do we do this? How do we become a welcoming place for LGBT people? How can we make them feel comfortable here? All right, Anthony, thank you. Unfortunately, we cannot look at this in a silo, right? It's not just one thing, it's a whole bunch of other things. I do a lot of work with immigration, which again is very busy right now, as you can imagine. There are many people in undocumented immigrants who are LGBT, right? We're not just in one group of people, there's a group of people that aren't in any other groups. We're in every group that exists, right? So these are the things we're going to talk about. What do we mean by the queer community? What does ministry with or reaching out actually mean? What does our church mean? Why do you want to do this? And what about you yourselves? How are you thinking and feeling about this? Thanks, Hannah. So what does queer community mean? Next one. Okay, so when you think about queer people, are you thinking mostly of people who are same-sex attracted? Are you thinking of people who are transgender? Do you know what the letters of the alphabet soup mean? Do you know the language they use? Do you know what they're talking about and what certain terms mean? Are you prepared to accept every single person who forms a part of this community? Like, it's not L and G without the B and T, it's the whole community. And do you have in mind a particular neighborhood where a queer community already exists? So those are some of the things you want to start thinking about when you say, well, we want to do this. These are the questions I want you to be asking yourselves. Ministry with or reaching out. Thanks, Hunter. So, is your theology really squared away? And I'm not going to do the big talk on all of the clobber passages. You know what clobber passages are? Right? I'm not going to tell you about all of those. There's plenty of stuff you can read online about that now. Or do you have a biblical view of marriage? And by biblical view, we talk about it being between a man and a woman, because that's what traditionally has been said. What's your view of the image of God? Do you truly believe that we are all created in the image of God, and we are all beloved children of God? Right? These are the things you've got to be thinking about. And why? Why do you want to reach out? What do you want to achieve by reaching out and welcoming people that, quite frankly, are scared to come in the door? Do you know the difference between inclusive and affirming? They're very different words. I was at a conference once, it was a United Methodist Church conference, talking about what are we going to do to move the church forward and stop fighting over all of this. And they had people from all over the country selected. We were handpicked and invited to go. And when I got there, we were all assigned tables. We couldn't just go sit where we wanted to have these conversations. We had to go sit. And they could put one queer person at every table, one black person at every table, one Asian person at every table. That's not inclusive, right? Because you are sitting there at that table with the weight of that whole community on your shoulders. And it's a hell of a responsibility. We don't think the same either. So that's not inclusive, right? Affirming is being able to lift people up, right? And value them for their presence. Use their gifts and skills in ways that they haven't been able to fully explore. And treat them as the same as everybody else. And are you doing this to reach out to share the gospel? Is that why you're doing it? Or are you doing it to make a new friend? There's no right or wrong answer, but know what your intentions are before you do it, right? Because they have different outcomes. Thanks. Our church. What does this mean and what does it look like currently? Next one. Do you want to make it an official church ministry? Like, is it that big a thing that your church wants to do, that you actually want to make it a ministry of your church? Does your church all feel the same way? Or are there conversations you've got to have within your church community? Do you expect your Sunday services to change? I've done talks like this for the last few years, and some of the questions I've been asked are, some of them are going to have a gay church now. What's a gay church? I mean, it sounds like fun to me, I'd like to go, but what is it? What is it? What do they mean by that? And is your church ready to be radically hospitable? Are you ready to do that? And again, is this something just a few people want to do, or is everybody on board? And are you ready to change some language in your church? Are you ready to start saying things like siblings instead of brother and sister? And maybe not using male pronouns for God. That's one of my biggest things. But you may have to change some of the language you use and the way you use it to be more affirming of everybody that walks in your door. Next one. And I guess why? Why do you want to do this? Thanks, Hannah. Why LGBT people? Why not people who are hungry or people who are homeless or, why do you pick that particular group? Are they your friends, your family, your colleagues, your neighbours? What are you hoping the outcome will be? Do you already have relationships within this community? How has God worked within you to facilitate this? And do you have support? I always tell people that being an ally is a verb, it's an action, it's something you have to do. And whenever we do something like that, it's really good to have people walking alongside you so you're not doing it all and carrying the whole weight of it by yourself. Thanks, Jonathan. So are you ready? Next one. Do you know your own theology or on human sexuality? Are these people made in the image of God? What are your own privileges and oppressions? Do you understand where you are, where you walk where others can't, and where you can't walk where others do? What do you want to gain personally from this? Does this community also need faith and repentance, justification and sanctification, love and friendship, warning and assurance? And again, do you have support? Don't do this if you're doing it by yourself. It's too hard. Okay. All right, next one. Okay, so what do we expect? I can tell you now straight away that LGBT people are not going to come knocking on the door of your church and say, please let me in. It's been going on for far too long and it's been far too harmful. So that don't expect people, if you put a rainbow flag outside, to come flooding to your door, because they're not going to do that. Are you willing to engage in some difficult conversations, right? That's why we have the questions about theology, because you have to know your theology if you're going to then talk to people who are going to say to you, but I was told this growing up, that I've been called an abomination, that I'm sinful, that I'm going to hell. Are you ready to be able to have those conversations? Don't overwhelm people, yourself or the people that you're trying to work with. And go outside of the church doors into the community. Make yourself known within the whole community. Because as I said, they're not coming here, so you've got to go out there to them. Which is kind of what Jesus did, right? Went out to people, didn't wait for people to come. Thanks, honey. Where are we? Where are the queers? Anywhere and everywhere. We're all around. But some really good places to start making connections and building relationships are GSA clubs. Do you know what they are? Gay Straight Alliances in high schools. Right? They're really good. They always have a teacher attached to them because they have to. Connect with a teacher. One of the churches I was at, we arranged to send pizza for their lunch every week when they're there. It's a really good way to start building connections and relationships. P-Flag. Do you have P-Flag here? Not at this place. Oh, you used to be here?
No, it used to just be in the city.
Oh, not anymore?
Not since the pandemic.
So there's a great opportunity. P-Flag, Parents for Lesbian and Gay Children. It's a really great support group. This would be a great place for them to be able to come and meet. Small groups, and I doubt you have a queer part of town here, do you? No. But where do they go? Because they do. So In the houses? Oh, your house. In her house. Excuse me. And here's the big thing to remember, right? We're all made up of all these things. And being queer is one tiny part of our identity. It's not all of it. And you don't have to focus on it, because there's many other things that you can talk about and discuss. All right. So, what are LGBT people looking for? I can't speak for everybody, and I don't pretend to speak for everybody, but here are some of the things that I have heard or experienced myself. Community. We are all looking for community, right? Ever since the pandemic, a lack of community has just got worse and worse and worse. And it's many of the reasons where we are today. But also, to be accepted, to be included, to be affirmed, to be valued, right? To be made feel worthy. To be treated the same as everyone else, and not to be treated differently. And to explore our spirituality in ways we've not been allowed to. So many LGBT people grew up in the church, and when they came out, their families rejected them, and then their churches rejected them too. And now they have all these questions, and everything that was home and safe and secure to them was ripped away, but it's still there because it was foundational in their growth and development. So now they need places to be able to, very gently to begin with, explore their spirituality in ways that they have never been able to. And then the last one, to know we too are beloved children of God. We too are created in the image of God. Thanks, Hunter. What's worked? So Pride events have been so successful for ways of helping LGBT people know that the church is with them, that they don't stand alone, that there are places for them to go and places they can reach out to. And I understand that this church is going to have a Pride event here this year, so there's a good place to start. And again, connections with GSAP Flag and LGBT centres, and I know Pastor Drew has already done some of that work. And small groups outside of church walls. When I was appointed to Hollywood United Methodist Church, we ran a thing called Spirit Club, where we met in one of the gay bars in West Hollywood. And it started off with 5, 6, 7 of us, and we'd meet, have a drink, something to eat. By the end of my time there was 40 people coming to that. Because people saw us, they saw us out, and like, they'd overhear us talking about God, and how is it with your soul, and all these weird questions, and they were like, what's going on? And they started to come, they started to get more curious. So that was a very successful ministry. Thanks, Hunter. Language. I'm not going to go over all of the language because there's a lot. And here's one thing you need to know: it changes real fast. And new stuff happens all the time, and we can't keep up with it all. So I'm going to not go through all of these, but what you do need to know is keep learning, keep looking, keep asking the young people, what words are you using? What words do you use to describe yourself, and what does that mean to you, right? Because that's how we learn the language and start to be able to speak with them. Okay. And I mean, all these ones, as I say, I'm not going to go through them all. You know these words, you've heard these. I hate coming out. I hate that because it's an expression of me giving a part of myself to you. I would far rather describe it as inviting in, where I'm inviting you into my story to tell you about myself, and I trust you enough to make you a part of that. So I much prefer using that language than coming out. Okay. Okay, here's the alphabet soup, as I like to call it, and the different terms. I'm not going to go through them all, and I will leave Drew with a copy of these slides if you want them. This was up to date as of about 6 months ago. That may have changed since then. I haven't had a chance to do that. Next one, Hunter. And that's a really good one for helping people. With the 2S at the front, Two-Spirit is our native people's way of talking about LGBT people. The LGB is talking about sexual orientation. The T is gender identity. Q is queer. I'll come back to that in a minute. Or questioning. The I is a sign at birth for people who are born intersex. Right, so they're born with both sets of organs. The parents make the decision for them, generally when they're born. and it may not be the one they identify with later in life. And A is thinking about gender expression. The plus is for all the rest that are to come as we grow and develop the language. The Q has many different meanings and interpretations. It's one I use. And the reason I use it, and a few other people I think of my generation use it, because I don't have to tell you which one of those I am if I tell you I'm queer. I'm just part of that group, and I can keep a little bit of myself to me. I'm not sharing all of me with you because, quite frankly, it's none of your business, right? But that gives me a little bit more of a protection. Thanks, Sandra. And again, I think I just preempted myself. All right, so these are the ones as of probably 6 to 8 months ago, and I'm not going to go through them all because and the writing's too small for you to read them all. So we'll just skip through them, but I will give them to Drew so he can share them with you if you'd like them afterwards. Okay. Keep going. Go back onto pronouns just a minute. One of the best memes I've seen lately about pronouns was if the Gulf of Mexico can change its name, then I'm pretty sure we can manage to do it. So it's really important, and normally at this point, in a smaller group, I give out pronoun badges and invite people to take one of a pronoun that isn't obviously theirs. And then you go off in pairs, and you introduce each other, find out some things about each other, and then you introduce the other person, right? Because then you have to use these pronouns that you're not used to using. And it's tricky, it's not perfectly easy, but it's not impossible. And it just helps people become a little bit more comfortable with changing their perception of what pronouns somebody should have, right? So that's quite a good exercise if you wanted to do that in groups of people moving forward. All right, thanks, Hunter. Keep going. I'll just go through all of these. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah. Okay, stop that. So these were some things that we can do to make changes in our organisation and our church to help people feel that they are more welcome and included than they have been up to now. So, membership forms, sign-up forms, any kind of form that you have to fill in, and we spend our lives filling in forms, right? Do they have a space for sex rather than gender, right? And is there options on that for gender? Can you say, none of the above, or non-binary, or whatever you want to say? Is there a space for you to say what pronouns you use? So look at all the forms. Look at all the forms and see which ways you're not being inclusive of everybody. Your bulletins. Are there gender-specific words and language in that might need to change to just offer more of a welcome for other people? And then everyday language in all we say or do. Are we using this language so that we normalize it? Because right now there's our language and there's this other language that we're trying to learn, but the more we use it, the more it becomes normalized. And children who are listening to every single thing we say will hear that. And it will become, to them it's just a part of language, right? Because they're learning it as you go. So it's really important to pick up this language and start using it. Right, so language keeps changing. So read the Advocate, read Huffington Post, go to websites such as the Human Rights Campaign, and theological publications. There's also some on our CalPAC website that help keep you up to date and find out what the changes are. Don't be nervous. You don't have to know it all to be affirming, and it's okay to say, I'm sorry, I don't know, or I don't understand what that means. Would you mind explaining it to me? People are fine with that. And so may I ask what words you use to describe yourself? And can you tell me what that means to you? So that you start to learn and develop an understanding. But the worst thing of all to do is to be silent, right? Because not saying anything is sometimes worse than saying something nasty, right? It's more affirming. Thanks, Sam. Okay. Next one. Okay, so 4 in 10, this is 2018, so it's a few years ago now, but 4 in 10 LGBTU say that the community they live in is not accepting of LGBT people. It's almost half. Okay? LGBT youth are twice as likely as their peers to say they've been physically assaulted, kicked or shoved. Twice as likely. Next one. 26% of LGBT youth say their biggest problems are not feeling accepted by their family, trouble at school or bullying, and a fear to be out or in the open. 22% of non-LGBT youth say their biggest problems are trouble with class exams and grades. So more LGBT youth have trouble with bullying and not being accepted than they do with taking tests and having their grades. And this is getting worse now, right? You understand now that these figures are probably way higher right now than they were last year. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, 73% of LGBT youth say they're more honest online than they are in public, which has its own whole bunch of issues, right? That does not make it safe. 75% of LGBT youth say that most of their peers don't have a problem with them identifying as LGBT. Next one. 92% of LGBT youth say they hear negative messages about being LGBT, and mostly from the school, the internet, and their peers. That's a lot. That's a big number of sources that are right around them and surrounding them all the time. Next one. 2/3 of high school youth say they're out to their classmates. Next one. And 68% of LGBT youth say they hear negative messages about being LGBT from active leaders. I imagine that's probably at about 100% right now. Next one. LGBT youth out to their immediate families are more likely to report being happy than those who are not out. That's fairly obvious, right? I imagine that those youth that are out and have been accepted by their family that say that. Okay, next one. Creating a safe environment. Okay. So again, language used. Open, talked about, trust, and not gender-specific language. Activities, make them varied and inclusive and not separate by gender. So this is often talking about when you're working with youth and young people, or you're doing a group exercise, you know, think of something different to say the boys go that side, girls go that side, right? If you've got brown hair, go that side, all right? Those kind of things really make a difference to people being feeling that they are part of it and they're not being, they don't have to make a decision. Which side do I go, right? What do they need? Remember their intersectionality, it's not all they are. And have people in leadership roles who look like them. One of the biggest problems for me ever answering my call was because not only were there no women in clergy, there certainly weren't any queer ones. And there weren't any prominent leaders or lay people in the church that I could look to who were anything other than cisgendered heterosexual people. Next one. Coming out. I've already said my little bit about coming out. Who's seen Love, Simon, the movie Love, Simon? My favourite bit of that movie is when Simon comes out, talks to his mom, you know, and his mom, he says to his mom, after he's come out, he says to his mom, did you know? And she says to him, you can breathe now. You can just be yourself now. It's the most beautiful thing. Sometimes I have to click. Right now I can't because it makes me cry every time and you don't want to see that. So you're not going to pay it again. But it's so beautiful and so loving and so soft. It's one of my favourite things. It's the most gentle mum and son talk I could imagine when it comes to coming out. Next one. So I've told you about the inviting in and why I like that a bit more. And when I do this to churches, I always tell clergy, you know when you realise you wanted to be a pastor and the first person you go and tell, I think God's calling me to be a pastor. You know that feeling? It's a little bit like coming out. A little bit like that, right? But I always also tell them, it's a real privilege and an honour for someone to come out to you, to invite you into their story. And you should treat it with that respect and honour and love and gratitude of that person sharing that with you, because it's really important. And the other most important thing is never lead somebody. Don't make anybody say what they don't want to say. It's got to come from them. It's their story. They're telling you. Don't lead it. Don't guide it. Don't add bits that you think. Just sit there and listen. And tell them to breathe. Next one. So yeah, that's my figure. So for people over 60 now, the average age was 37. For millennials, the average age is 17, but this is 2 or 3 years old now. So the age of people inviting others into their story has really gone down. But if people are sharing their story with you, you do need to remember that you need to understand what their family dynamics are, right? You need to understand all of that stuff, particularly young people, and they're looking for help. And also their family might need some support and help too, so you need to be there for them. And one of these statistics that really terrifies me is that there is 1.6 million homeless youth that are unhoused, don't live in homes in the United States, and over 40% of them identify as queer. That's a huge number. And in Los Angeles, where we have a terrible problem with unhoused people and where to put them and what to do with them, of all the shelters, and there are many in Los Angeles, there is one that is LGBT friendly out of all of them. Most of the others, it's not safe for people to go to. Next one. And again. Okay, and then one of the tangible things that I suggest places do is build this support document. So if you are fortunate enough to have some LGBT people want to come to your church and need some help or some guidance, they're new to the area or they're exploring, having this kind of document is really helpful. Next one. What's the suicide prevention lines here? What's the Trevor Project lines? What's the Trans Lifeline numbers? What's the number of the LGBT centres and P-flag people? What are the gay straight alliances in the schools and how do they contact them? Who's the best licensed clinical social worker for working with LGBT people in the area? What are affirming therapists who are affirming? Because not all are, right? So it's just a list of information. You're new to the area, here's some stuff that might help you if you need it. Are there homeless shelters here? And if so, which ones are LGBT friendly and safe for you to go to? So, and also the point is you can't do all these things, right? However much you want to and want to be that person, you can't. So gather the resources so that you can help people when they need it. Next one. All right, I'm done talking. I'm happy to answer any and all of your questions. We just asked that this is being recorded, so if you could come up to the microphone so they can capture it, that would be great. You have a question? Would you like me to bring the microphone to you?
Usually I can be heard anywhere. Woodrow Wilson put integration and equal rights right back to the Civil War by embracing the Ku Klux Klan. Okay? And now we have President Trump, who is engaged in encouraging every single prejudice that he can to take us apart.
Yeah.
What's your plan?
What's my plan?
What
Not my plan.
is your plan?
Do you know what I think the problem is? And I think that the shock and awe tactics of everything that's happened in the last month, the attacks on each possible group of marginalized and oppressed people, is a very deliberate and direct campaign to keep everybody divided.
Absolutely.
Because we are all so worried about our own safety, we're not worried about anyone else's because we don't have the capacity. We're terrified for ourselves. The only way that can be overcome is for us to come together. And this has been my mantra for the longest time ever. We have to forget my oppression is bigger than your oppression, right? The oppression Olympics has got to stop. We have got to say we are all being oppressed, we are all being marginalized, it's wrong. We all come together because there's more of us than there is of them if we could only come together. That's my plan.
The whole point is, even though I'm born and raised in East St. Louis, I only care that you're a human being. I don't care about what classification being Christian human being helps.
Yeah. But you are a rare entity right now, sir. You are a rare entity right now. That's the problem. The level of dehumanization that is happening in this country means that so many people don't look upon anybody else as a human being, let alone a beloved child of God, right? That's the problem. So combine that with all of this stuff saying these people should be gone and these people should be gone and these people should be gone. That's the problem. That's the level of hate and distrust. And it's been built on by a pandemic that separated us all whether we liked it or not. And is it's a result of capitalism, right? It's an unrealized and unfounded result of capitalism. It's a society that believes and teaches a culture of I need more and more and more to be a better person. I need this big house and this pool and these dogs and these kids that have to have all these Ivy League colleges and great scores and be achieving. I need all of that, so I have to keep working on that ladder. And I will step on whoever I need to step on to get them. Meanwhile, the people that are serving them and taking care of them are being trampled in the process. And the countries where we take our supplies or where we deposit our trash are the countries where the people are barely have enough to eat. That's our fault. But we're dehumanizing them further by saying that these people that are here, all of these people that are undocumented here, need to go back there because they're all criminals. Do you see what I'm saying though? It's the net result of a capitalist society that is causing this. And until we stop and say, okay, we did this, right? And it's colonialism and Christian colonialism and it's all of those things wrapped into one. And that machine of capitalism only can survive if there is another that we're all terrified of. It's the only way that can survive because we're in a security state, right? We have a police force that takes care of us, a police force that keeps us safe, an army that makes us a security state. But in order to justify having a security state, we need one because there's these things over here which are terrifying, right? That's how it works. And he's just doubling down on all of that and then some.
This church is the answer, right? Because this church puts everybody together, straight with everything else. And nobody cares.
Well, I think the people that are here care. But what we need to do is find each other and join forces. That's what we need to do. Thank you. There's a lady at the back.
Hi, so my wife and I run a group called Emily's Space, where it's a safe space for LGBTQI teens. And it's run out of a church in this valley. And people aren't bringing their children because they're scared of the church.
Yeah.
They're scared to bring their kids to a church. They're afraid, I guess, we're going to fix them or that we're not authentic. So can you speak to that fear of the queer community towards church?
Yeah, it's a big one. That's why I said earlier that the rainbow up outside, expect everyone to come running in because they're not going to come running in. There has been so much harm done to so many people in the LGBT community by the church. And not least of all, let's go back to Catholic priests who are not allowed to marry and who take out their frustrations on the boys in the orphanage, right? I mean, this has gone on a long time. And that self-loathing and self-hatred that comes from people who are not allowed to be who they want to be. And when you lose your church, if you've already lost your family, and then you lose your church which you grew up in too, that's like everything you ever had a foundation on has gone away. So people are terrified, and I think the only way I have been seeing it successful is by people going out and doing things outside, right? So like pride festivals, like being represented elsewhere, so that people can see, oh wait, you're a church. You know, people often say to me, I like your hair, I love the hair colour, blah, blah, blah. And we get talking, and then I'm like, I'm a pastor. And they're like, no. And you can always see the disappointment in their face. But then I tell them I'm a lesbian, and I have a wife who's Jewish, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, I'm going to come to your church. Right? Because it's against everything else. So I think one of the answers is go outside and talk about it, talk it up. Catholic kids that are allowed to go share their experiences, and maybe that will be the way to start building some trust. And also having older people in the church who look like the kids is really helpful. Because if the parents of the kids that are scared see older queer adults in the church, that is also going to help make them more, I think. It would me, I think. So it's not, I don't have the whole answer, but it's a start.
Denise, all the terminology that I represented there, I'm just about to turn 83, and the terminology has only existed recently, and despite trying to use it, because my understanding of the importance of that terminology is that the individuals that are using it, it's important for them, for you to understand who they see themselves to be. And that's the most important part of it. And because they need to have you recognize that, it becomes important to use it.
Right.
I understand what most of that terminology is and when you use it. The problem is, I've been not using it for so long that I'm not very reliable in using it. And I had an experience recently where an individual that uses this terminology, who I have felt very guilty about, because there's times I remember to use the right terminology and times I don't. And one of the things that helped me, as guilty as I was about not supporting that person, at one point in time, that person made a comment that said, it really wasn't important for me to use the correct terminology because, and this were their exact words, you accept me as I am. So, they took me off the hook because I wasn't doing what I would have liked to support them. But they realized I didn't have to do that because I was doing what they were doing. But I guess my question to you is, based on what I said, I guess I'm not sure just what I need to do, or also asking if that isn't a more important factor than most of us have. In other words, the terminology is there. It's obviously important because they want to use it. But the more important thing is to understand why they want to use it.
Right.
So that if you can find some other way to express what they want, the terminology becomes less important.
Right.
And in a perfect world, we get to a place where we didn't have to use
Right.
that terminology because we would be taking everybody as they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Wouldn't that be great? So that speaks to the actions speak louder than words, right? It's how you are that tells people that yes, you're welcoming, you're welcomed here, and I accept you exactly for who you are. But also to one of the slides that said, can you tell me what words you use to describe yourself, right? And then tell me what that means to you. That's the important part. What does that mean to you? Because they may just say one or two things in there that mean something very specific to them that you think, oh, okay, and now I get it. And they felt heard and understood. Do you see what I mean? So it's asking people, what does it mean to you?
Yeah.
Right? Rather than just saying, well, what word do you use? I'll try and remember to use it. you know? But you're gonna have to forgive me if I don't, right? What does it mean to you? Thank you. No, no.
I guess I want to share something, especially I see a contingent from Hope Lutheran Church. And that's the church I attended when I came out. I came out at 40 years old. And when I came out to the pastor, whom I'd gone to pastoral counseling for quite a while, finally felt firm about what I was going to say, and I shared it with her. She then took me to the rest of the staff at that church and had me come out to the whole staff. And I wasn't prepared for that. So I just share that with people who say they care. When someone's coming out to you, it doesn't mean they're coming out to your whole club or your whole whatever. Coming out to you. Wow, it was pretty
Yeah.
shocking.
Yeah.
And I love how you say letting someone in.
Right.
Because I kind of felt like, oh, am I supposed to now tell everybody like I would to everybody?
Right.
And I found out by going to support groups, I didn't know it to anybody. I just,
No.
when I felt comfortable.
And it's not your responsibility to tell people that I'm just telling you this, right? It's not your job. You're sharing a huge part of yourself with somebody.
Yeah.
They need to respect you enough to know that that's not their
And a lot of these
decision.
folks that are here, I know in other foreign faces, and I'm sorry that I left that church for some of that reason. Yeah.
That's why we're all here tonight.
So the reason my wife is white, but the reason my wife and I came to this church, we were looking around. The reason we came here and stayed here is because our kids are Uchinanchu, Okinawan, and black. And when we walked into this house, we saw a lot of different colors when we walked in this house. And that's why we stayed. And then when you start listening to the message at the time it was read, and you realize that the color does matter, and the shape does matter, because we all are unique and beautiful. But then along the way, we also learn some of the other principles that were guiding this church, i.e., you can come in here and not just be a part, but participate. And so, and now then you have a conference in May. Now you can actively and openly be part, openly part of the committees and whatnot. So, and then my question is this. I know Drew, this is very important to Drew, and it's very important to us. What should we do next? What should we do from here? That's my question.
I don't know. What do you want to do? I mean, really, I don't know.
Yeah.
Pride is a really good start. I love the idea that you're going to have a private celebration here. I think that's a fantastic place to start.
I'm Ken's mom, and as you heard, we have a mixed family, and my grandchildren are always saying, "Oh, Grandma, you can't call me that anymore. I'm not Asian. I'm Asian. I'm not Oriental. I'm never sure are they African American or are they black." But last week I went someplace and I had to fill out one of those forms that we all fill out in order to get some help with something. And it was like, what difference does it make who I sleep with, what color I am, how old I am, if I'm disabled or not disabled, what side of town I live in, if I voted Democrat or Republican, in order to get help. In so many places, I worked for a large insurance company for many years, and I worked there for like 9 years before I ever even realized that with counseling, they had Christian counselors or generic counselors. I never ever saw any other designation, somebody that would be sympathetic to elderly or gay, lesbian, queer, individuals, and, you could get into a situation with counseling even that, with the wrong counselor, they could do irreparable damage.
Absolutely. I agree, thank you for that, that's a beautiful point. And you made me think, so, another side of my job is disaster response, and we lost 2 churches in the fires, and many of our church members lost their homes. We also have UMCOR, which is the United Methodist Committee on Relief, which is very active in any kind of disaster. And we were doing a resource fair, it's called a hub, for fire impacted families to come and get supplies and start get help with assistance with whatever it is they need help with. And I was really struck by the intake that we were doing, which was, what's your name? What was your address? What's your phone number? That was it. That's all we needed to know to do the job we were there to do, which was to help. And you reminded me of that then, and I just thought, yeah, why do we need all this other information that's irrelevant, that puts us in boxes that we don't need to be in, because that's what causes all of the problems of being able to come together. So yeah, thank you for that. And I'm not being flippant with you, I don't know. I don't know this area. I don't know the people here, but get a committee together. What do you want to do next, and how do you grow it? I think that that's the best advice I can give.
I guess it's an open-ended question, as in, I know that that's part of what this committee is about.
Right.
And it has to be a group thing.
Yes.
It can't be a group thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. I get that. I do get that. But you're on the right track. I know that for sure.
That's the kindergarten teacher.
I was gonna just, I speak very loudly also. I'm a teacher, and I was gonna talk, one of the things you can't do is, especially in Temecula, show up at your school board. And don't let them show up in your church shirt. And don't let the Christian nationalists, try to put, we had a teacher once that they were trying to, they had a kid up there and say, he's trying to, make everybody LGBT. No. So when they have you in those seats saying, no, I'm not gonna listen to this, because our school board is bound and determined to make teachers
Yes.
frightened. So I went to a lot of, union-sponsored activities, I go into the conferences to learn all the laws, so I didn't feel frightened to include. I'm only a 5th grade teacher. I feel like.
Don't ever say only.
I meant,
teacher, please.
because a lot of people, well, a lot of teachers even and families are like, it doesn't need to be an elementary, and it absolutely it does.
Yes.
Children know at that time, we have families who have, I have a granddaughter who has 2 moms, I have a student right now who has 2 moms, and I feel like that they should feel affirmed in their school also, and the fact that I have to worry about books in my room, or, even about families is, but part of that is being at the school board meeting. And that's something we all can be at,
That's
the
great.
school board meeting, and because a lot of the Christians wanna show up there and demand that the schools are safe for, from the LGBT people.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point. And I know Pastor Drew has been often and spoken. But yeah, please do. Let me just say, one thing you could do is get some shirts made, right? This is our church. We love everybody. You're all welcome. Just representation out there. Wouldn't hurt.
I wanna thank you for sharing that. When I worked in Oceanside, I went to Oceanside school board meetings. I go to Escondido school board meetings for my son. I've been to 4 school board meetings here in Temecula. And what you just shared is the absolute fact. Because the first time I went to a Temecula school board meeting, I had my collar on, my blue shirt, my white collar, and I saw all these expressions of what is this guy gonna say. And as soon as I didn't say what everyone else was saying, you could both see a sigh of relief, because I'm kind of selfish. I watched the video later to see what it looked like. And I could see all these expressions behind me shift, because it's like Helen shared a minute ago, that people hear church and they hear who churches hate, until churches that don't go out and speak. And that's why I go to the school board. It's why I go stand over at the duck pond. It is because we need to have people that, and I'm speaking about me as a pastor and Dr. Barnes as a pastor, we need to have people that wear our clothes do what's right, instead of having people that wear our clothes wreck everything. So thank you for sharing.
I'm sure you were only looking at for research purposes, right?
Yeah, research.
How to do better next year.
Post-game tape, taking notes.
Anyone?
There you go. Thank you.
I just have a real simple question, and I'm not uncomfortable. I want to make sure I'm not, it's a we versus them, or, I understand and accept, someone being gay. But, we're talking about coming out versus letting someone in.
Inviting.
And my question is, if I know, and this is even hard, if I know pretty well that a person in my own church is gay, and I'd like to get to know them better, how does that happen? And I would guess you just get to know them as any other person and let the conversation develop. That to me would be the answer, but I would like some degree of, that I understand, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah,
That
thank
sort of
you.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, just being friendly and being normal, like, it's not a thing, because it's not a thing.
Right.
And let it be them, invite you in. Don't force them to come out to you.
That's what I was thinking you'd say. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one down here.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes, for your information and sharing your heart and your story. I want to share also with the folks here that there's another opportunity. The city of Temecula has a Race Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Commission that meets every second Thursday of the month. June is Pride Month. We'll be doing a full Pride proclamation on June 12th, so I invite you all to show up. Please come whenever you think of it. We need the community, we need the church to be there to remind our city council and the folks that run the city that this is a diverse, beautifully diverse community, so I invite you all to come out for that. Your comments about stacking oppressions, the tactic of white supremacy is to divide and distract. And I think that there's some real importance in that we need to be clear that those tactics are simple, they're not complex, they're insidious, and they're actually predictable.
Right.
And so we need to think about collectively how we stand in the gap around all oppressions. And I am curious about, and I also think that, having been in the church for a very long time, that the church, the Christian church, has to hold the Christian church accountable some kind of way. That's not happening in this community right now. From my perspective, we have an interfaith council that is formed, and we have a number of churches that are in their own forms of resistance around different oppressions. But I'm curious about your thoughts, your comments about how a church can be externally facing. Your notion of allyship being an active word, an action word, is really important, because too often allyship is performative.
Right.
We call ourselves allies and then don't do anything. So it's really, I'm interested in your thoughts about how the church can be seen outside the doors, outside the building, and how we can show up in the community to support, or to fight the oppressions that we're experiencing.
That's a great question, and I think the answer is, who else is doing it and can do it with them, right? So we all do too much by ourselves. We don't have to take it all on by ourselves. So find out who does what where, pull them all together, and then invite them to your different locations so that people can see you're working together. So we work a lot with an agency called CLU, which is Clergy and Laity United for Economic Equity. They do all kinds of things like, there was an action in the summer for hotel workers to be paid a living wage, right? Instead of having to have 3 jobs and live 4 hours outside of LA to get that. And they made a call to us, and I got arrested for civil disobedience for standing up for them. One of the most powerful things I've ever done, and it felt really good to be seen by them that I was prepared to do it for them. But I didn't arrange it or organize it, I just went along because someone else was doing it. And that's what you need to do, is create that network of people who are doing this stuff and start finding out where you can do stuff together. I have, in my job, all of the different groups that I work with, which is mental health and women's rights and LGBT people and immigration and hunger and homelessness. All of those groups contain all of the others. And I'm really trying to get them to see that they all are the same. There should all be different groups. We should all be working together for the common cause of all of it. And that's what we all need to be doing smarter and wiser. I think someone.
So my question is around how to engage with folks who point us feel differently. I'm really curious what your experience has been like interacting with your siblings at the Global Methodist Church. I ask because I'm sure many of us in this room have family members, friends, coworkers who voted differently than we did. And in church, even we've been going over what it's like to treat others who we use our enemies and how we're supposed to love our enemies. I was wondering if you could just speak to how you react to those people and how we can move forward or see traction in those interactions.
That's a really tough question, and I think there are many people that are searching for the answer to that right now. I haven't had any interaction with anybody from the Global Methodist Church, but I'm not likely to because I'm an out Lesbian Christian. So I don't think there's any way that any of them would come in anything. As far as the bigger picture of the world, it's interesting. So I stayed in a hotel last night, and when I went to get my car this morning, the young man, valet car, he wasn't the driver, he was like, I don't know what he was doing, but he had the valet uniform on and he took my ticket. So anyway, he got talking to me and he asked me what colour my hair was and why did I have my hair that colour and blah, blah, blah. We had a good conversation. Where did I come from, blah, 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 blah. And it moved. The conversation started to shift because I'm an immigrant, right? And so he said, oh, what do you think about everything that's happening right now? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have this conversation on a Sunday morning. Thank you. We didn't agree. We didn't agree. Well, I had the conversation. We didn't agree. But it was a beautiful conversation. We shook hands, we hugged, I left. We didn't agree. He understood where I was coming from. I did my best to understand where he was coming from without judging. So he was spouting about how all of these undocumented immigrants are criminals, right? Every single one of them is a criminal and they all need to go. And I said to him, I was undocumented for 5 years. And that really brought him up short. He said, but you're white and you speak English. And I'm like, I'm a lesbian, and until Zoma was overturned, my marriage wasn't recognized, right? So there's all that kind of stuff. And I know where he gets his information from as well as you do, right? What I wanted to do was go and say to him, stop watching Fox News, go find something else to listen to, but that's not helpful. All that's going to do is poke the bear and make it worse. So I just said to him, we always want to make sure that we're safe and secure from a criminal element, right? But I don't believe that all of those people are criminals. And I believe that the dehumanization of them, so I just very clearly and very nicely with a big smile on my face pointed out my point of view. He accepted it, he took it, and we went about our way. And I called my wife on the way here to tell her about it because it was so beautiful. That's not the answer that you're looking for, but I don't know what the answer is, other than having the courage to have those conversations. And I think many of us are too frightened to do that right now, but I think we have to. And we have to be prepared to say, this is what I believe, these are the people I stand for, and you two are beloved child of God and I love you, regardless of anything else. And we have to learn to do it in a way that is calm, that is measured, that is dispassionate, but is done with love. And none of us have the skills to do that. So we have to learn. We have to learn them fast. And because by doing that, we're taking away the dehumanization, right? It's really hard to stare at someone who maybe represents everything you don't like, but who is speaking to you out of love and kindness and scream and yell in your face. It's really hard to do that unless you have complete lack of self-control. So we have to find and learn and start building up the ways to do that. I think is the only answer, but it does take courage. Sorry.
with that though is that you have to have people that have your back too. So when you're done with that conversation, you can call your wife.
Right,
When
yes,
you're done
of
with that
course.
conversation, you can call your sibling.
It goes back to the don't do all this alone, right? Have your groups, yeah. And find who else is doing this stuff. Learn from each other. That's what we have to do. Whoever's doing what, let's go learn from them and build our skill sets.
Sounds horrible. One of the things I've learned, like, I said, I'm a kindergarten teacher. But as a kindergarten teacher, my fifth grade compadre probably does the same thing. You give these kids grace on grace on grace on grace on grace on grace on grace. Tomorrow is a new day, and it really is, right? I've had to learn to do that with adults. Okay, we really didn't do this right today, but tomorrow we're going to do it.
Right,
That's hard.
yeah.
Because I think you're adults.
Right, where's your self-control? Yeah. Yeah. I think some of the things that I do to help me in those situations is to try and wonder to myself, what happened to them to get them to this point, right? Because that then sparks my empathy. And if I can get that going, then there's a much better chance of a positive outcome by feeling love for that person than by, and not feeling the anger and the rage and the hurt. Because it's me that, me or who I am that is causing that hurt to come at me. If I can see what made you that way, yeah. Oh, everyone pointed over here.
Kind of switching gears here. I'm curious to know what reconciling your faith looked like, particularly because it seems like if you grew up reading the Bible as the clever passages and all these different things, what did it look like when you found your way back to God's love or understanding?
That's a great question. I didn't grow up reading the Bible passages. They weren't called that. She wanted, I'm sorry. Sika wanted to know how I reconciled my faith from what I grew up with to the faith I live now, right? So I didn't grow up reading clever passages. That wasn't the kind of religious education I had. I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up in a school church environment, right? So I grew up in England where so my church was called, for example, Westbury Church of England School. So we had religious education, but it was much more like the Sunday school we have here than studying Bible passages and learning them. I didn't start going to church until I was 13 when I was part of a choir. So I wasn't often at the church or I was there to sing. So it was kind of a different thing. What I did grow up with is that there was nobody in any of these churches or church environments that I went to that looked like me. And as I got older and understood who I was, much as I fought it for a long time, because we're not just dealing with church hurt, right? There's societal hurt and parental control and all the rest of it as well. So it was all in one. And so there wasn't anybody who looked like me. I felt this call to be part of a church, to teach Sunday school, to be the vicar's assistant, to do all of these things, which I did, but never to take that step further. Because there was nobody who looked like me. And while it wasn't overtly shouted at me, my parents were directly shouting at me about how corrupt the church was and how controlling it was and how blah, 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 blah. And my father's stepbrother was certainly anti-gay. And my mother definitely wasn't, as I found out later. But it wasn't until I also had quite a dysfunctional family, which feeds into all of this because I was the middle of three of us that grew up together, and I was the fixer of everything. Because I was the middle child, and so I fixed all the wrongs, and there was many wrongs going on. When I was in my 30s, I left England and went traveling, and I taught English as a second language across many Asian countries and Australia. And I was on the island of Penang by myself, didn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, couldn't even order the food in the restaurants, I couldn't read the menu. And there's nothing like being in that situation to do some real deep soul diving. And that's what I did when I was there. I really searched my soul, and I came to the point that I either would go home, and that was the life that I would have, or I would continue on this journey and figure out who I really was, and what I wanted out of my life. And I literally was sitting in my room sobbing, and I thought, I've got to do something. I'm going to go for a swim. That always makes me feel better. I went down to the beach. There's a bar on the beach. I left my stuff. And as I'm swimming, I'm like, God, this is all up to you now. I can't do any more. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And all of a sudden, the guys on the beach behind me started yelling and pointing. And I turned around in the water, and a dolphin came out of the water and sat here and looked at me. I'd never swum with dolphins up to that point. This was a wild dolphin. The first tattoo I ever got was a dolphin. They've always been my animal. And I always have taken that as my sign from God that I was on the right path and I should keep going. And it was at that point, I mean, not revelatory, all of a sudden, oh my God, this is right, God made me and I'm great. But that was the starting point of me accepting who God made me to be, and that was the life that I was to live. And that I would do it better. Not in that environment that I had come from, where I wasn't thriving and doing well, but going out and figuring out what it was. And then I moved to America, met somebody, we fell in love, we got married, and I was undocumented until we got married after a certain period of time. Got my green card after Denver was turned over, and whilst I was undocumented, I was terrified of going anywhere or of doing anything, of reaching out, of meeting people, of building a life, because I was frightened all the time. It's a horrible, horrible way to live. Especially for a rule follower, and I'm a rule follower, so it challenged me a lot. But then I got my green card, and I saw, the day we got home, I think from getting, another day it came in the mail, whatever day it was, a Facebook advert for a church bell choir that needed ringers because they were doing this big thing in Ohio at the Living Bowl for some holiday. And I thought, oh, that'd be fun, I can do it now, and I can feel safe doing it. And it's a church, but it's okay. So I went and I did it, and within a year, I was directing the bell choir, member of the church choir, church secretary, head church council chair, and really living into answering my call, and I blossomed. And I knew it was the right place for me, and I knew it was where I should be. And I answered my call, and I went to seminary, and there is nothing like seminary for deconstructing everything you know or believe or think you believe about God and faith, and rebuilding it. And that was the point at which I did all of that. That was the point where I read extensively the stuff that people had written in support of it, stuff that people had written saying, you know, it wasn't even there in the Bible originally. It got put in there. The word homosexual didn't even exist until Germans invented it, you know, in the war times. So I learned all of that, and I learned that it was okay. But I also knew that God had called me to that place for a reason, and that was where I answered my call. And that was who God wanted me to be. And it's a feeling that you know is right. Is that hard?
I wonder, do you have resources for gender and like inclusive worship, music, prayers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'll get your details and I'll send them to you. I've got a great hymn book. It's really good music.
I want them as well, please.
Okay. Well, thank you all for your time, for your attention, for your great questions, for your sharing of yourselves. I really appreciate your being here. I wish you luck. I wish you well. Rely on the church to give you whatever it is you need to help you on this journey, because they will do so.
Yes, I'd like to thank Dr. Barnes for being here today for this kind of conversation. I want to give you some dates because Dr. Barnes has shared about, we learn more about people by going and being with our siblings. So on June 7th is Pride by the Beach in Oceanside, California. May 17th is Riverside Pride. And more information to come about something that may be here on October the 11th. So, yes, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
There's waters in the back. If you want some more conversations.